So what's going on?
Well, is this official right now? Is that
It's
or
rolling.
what's going on with my weight?
No, what's going on?
Well,
in general?
we're facing our second snowstorm in April here
That's
in less than
right.
a week.
Yeah.
So we had what?
How much are we gonna get?
Well, I've heard everything from 1 to 3 to 4 to 8, Paul,
Yeah.
today. Although it's 41 degrees right now, so
Maybe it'll miss us.
yeah, we're gonna get some.
I went out back. This first time I've ever tapped maple trees,
Yeah,
and I've got a dozen maple trees out back that I thought, well, it'd be good to tap those. And
yeah.
so I went out back today because sap's running like crazy right now,
It is.
and I got 8 trees tapped, and I only collected from 6 of them yesterday, and I got 14 gallons.
Oh, no
yesterday.
kidding. Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
kind of overflowing. And so before
Yeah.
the storm came, I was like, I'll run out back and get some sap, empty them all out. And I get about 3/4 of the way back to the back of the woods, and the woods just came alive.
Oh dear.
There's deer running everywhere.
Yeah.
So I stopped and actually I forgot what time it was. I thought it was almost 1 o'clock, but it was almost 12 o'clock. So I'm like hurrying to get out there because I'm like, Dad's going to be here at 1 to shoot a podcast. But I stopped and I was like, you kind of want to like challenge yourself, see if you can pick out
Right.
deer before they take off. So then I can see the
Exactly.
rear end of a deer,
Yeah.
and I can see the body of another one. And then I see a tail go to the left, and I'm watching them. And so finally I make my way over, and they like to run along where I have all those maple trees. There's a field on the other side. I think it's like a 15-acre field or whatever.
Mm.
And about 6 feet in, there's like an old rock wall, and they like to run back and forth across. They stay right about 6 feet in off of that field.
You mean the lower field?
No, the back field.
Okay. Yeah. So,
Going towards Canada.
what was it? A month or so ago, you were gone, and I had taken your dog for a walk
Yep.
out there. Same thing, but it was in the
Lower end?
lower right corner.
So
there,
there's a section.
southwest corner.
Yeah. So there's an intersection at the corner of my property
Yeah.
where they'll come across
Yeah.
the bottom of that field, and they'll either come up the edge of the woods towards Canada or come across the edge of the woods across my lawn and out across. So I chuckled to myself, and oh my gosh, no deer in northern Maine, but
Yeah. Yeah. All over your property.
there's all kinds running out back.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah,
They
the
look
weather-
really good.
Oh, they should be. They should
look
be in
really
really
good.
good shape because you had deer going across the fields here basically all winter. There may have been a week or two where it slowed down. The snow got deep the end of
Yeah.
February, but not very long. And then we had a warm up early in March, and it pretty much took all the snow. There's still some left in the woods, but the snow in the fields has been gone for a month now.
Yeah, they've been hitting the fields pretty hard
Yeah.
in the evening, especially before a front comes through, like the snowstorm,
Right.
or like the last snowstorm we had that evening before. All of a sudden, there was just deer everywhere, heads down in the field.
Yeah.
Just mowing down.
Yeah.
That's good to see.
Yeah, that we've had, like I say, I don't know if I've ever seen. The last winter was probably the easiest winter I've ever seen.
Yeah, last winter was great.
This one was a little tougher, a little colder, and a little more snow, but not much. It
Nope.
was a really easy winter. So that's 2 in a row, and yeah,
Fall time's gonna be good.
yeah, it bodes
It's
well
real good.
for.
So we'll be fishing soon.
Hopefully,
soon.
Paul. I get everything registered. I got
starting to get the itch.
my tags back for the boat and the trailer. So
Got a good battery in that boat?
I got a new battery. It's been on a battery tender all winter. I learned my lesson.
Yeah.
I put my in the off season, whether snow sled or boats, I put my batteries on battery tenders in the off season. So
Yeah, we had a couple issues last year.
not last year, the year before.
Fall.
Yeah.
Dead battery.
Yeah, it'd been 2023 and then 2024 last year.
You had
I put a brand new battery in it.
Yeah, but didn't your pump was frozen in the foot of the motor? Was that last spring?
Yeah, that was when we were going fishing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just a temporary.
That warmed up.
Yeah, it warmed up. That was, and that was because, Paul, the ice had gone out of the lake so early. It was we were on the lake in in April, which we never
Yeah.
are. The ice went out. I think I got it marked down April 20th last year, 2024.
Yeah, that's early.
So we had gone out to go fishing, and yeah, a little bit of water had frozen the pump. It had gotten down at night into the
That was a cold night. That
20s or whatever, and so my little my water pump was froze, but it started right up and was running.
Yeah.
So
that morning going across the water was.
Yeah, I can get pretty cool in the boat in April.
Yeah. And I was thinking about fishing, and I came across something online the other day, and I don't remember exactly what state they were talking about, but I had to laugh. They were talking about how the regs had changed in this state on bag limit of yellow perch. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Because here,
many as you can catch.
there is no
bag limit.
Not a protected.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was, I had read, it was like, limited the bag limit to 10 perch.
Huh. Yeah. In some states, it's a big deal. Yellow perch
like,
are a big deal up here.
I guess Mainers are kind of, when it comes to fishing, are a bit, they're trout and salmon snobs.
Yeah. They're a little bit of elitist.
At least in northern Maine.
Yeah. Cold water fish.
Everything else is kind of a.
Yeah. Is a trash fish.
Like you just
and that's how I was
it.
raised. That's how I was raised. That, there was trout and salmon, and then there were trash fish.
Yeah.
That was it. That has changed. And, I was just reading an article just before I come out here about Harrington Lake there. They had a problem. The salmon population was dropping, and they were looking into it. The anglers were complaining about the lack of salmon, and this is down by Millinocket.
All right.
And so they did some netting and some stream surveys and stuff, and they found out the fishermen were right. There was a lack of salmon, and they were trying to address it. But one of the things they had mentioned was Harrington had no yellow and white perch population, but now they do. They said that it is since then it has been invaded by white and yellow perch. So
which we're dealing with up here.
Yeah,
the white perch.
Yeah. We'll see how that plays out with the brook trout in the future. It shouldn't bode well for the brook trout.
No, I think I noticed a difference last year.
Yeah, I did too.
Because the fish usually in the lake are quite healthy, like
plump.
Not necessarily large, but very plump. Yeah, football shape.
Yeah,
caught a lot of trout that were
skinny.
little racers.
Yeah, and I caught fewer trout in one of the lakes that I usually do well in fishing for trout. I caught a lot fewer.
Yeah,
and that lake is right full of white perch, so it's going to have an effect on them.
And I've been reading. Speaking of fishing and getting the itch to kind of get out there, I was reading that little pamphlet or that book that was put out by the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife on the history of the salmon fishery.
Oh, no kidding! Yeah,
you've seen it around here, right? I've had it for a while.
I actually have a book on the history of salmon in the state of Maine.
Pretty cool.
Yeah,
pretty neat.
Yeah. So can you tell me when they were stocked in the Fish River chain of lakes?
The 1800s.
1894.
Yeah.
Was they said within 9 years, Paul, they were getting fish, quite a few fish between 10 and 20 pounds.
Yeah.
The growth rate was like unreal.
There was originally 4 bodies of water in the state that had
there's four
native salmon populations, landlocked salmon populations.
The Green Lake, Sebec Lake, Sebago Lake. And I'm trying maybe the St. Croix?
West Grand.
Yeah, St. Croix.
Yep.
Watershed.
They, because there was some, they concur that those landlocked salmon had become not necessarily landlocked, but adapted physiologically.
Right.
To not going to
so
the sea.
They're Atlantic salmon.
It was almost a choice.
Right. They still had access, but for some reason.
It's a bit of a misnomer saying that they're, landlocked.
Right.
Because there's a lot of them that can go to the ocean if they wanted to, but they'd physiologically adapted to just fresh water.
Exactly.
And because I think there were some arguments back in the day that it was just they got trapped inland and
they get cut off from the ocean is what we believed at one time, or which was stated at one time. That I have heard that, Paul, that It was more so that they just adapted to. They still had access to the ocean, but
Just didn't.
so, yeah. And of course, same thing in Canada.
Yeah.
Up there, it's Wananish, they call them, the
Wananish.
Wananish. And there's all kinds of waterways up there that have landlocked salmon.
Yeah, and there's salmon up there. They almost look like a brown trout a little bit.
Yeah.
They're kind of a
well,
pretty...
salmon do oftentimes. If you look in your law book and stuff, they'll tell you the arrangement in the teeth and stuff, how to tell the difference between...
Seems like Maine salmon, though, at least up here, always seem to be kind of a shiny...
Yeah.
Unless they're spawned out.
Yeah.
All yellow.
A guy sent me a picture. He was ice fishing and he had caught one, and he said that he swore it was a brown trout, but what it was a... because it didn't have the forked tail and stuff. And it was a spawned out male salmon there that he'd caught ice fishing, and it was a salmon, but he thought for sure it was a brown trout, and it looked like a brown trout and stuff. But
I can't wait to get out on the water.
Yeah, drag a streamer behind the boat here. That won't be a couple weeks.
I need to tie in some flies. I was thinking, and we were talking the other day, I'd mentioned it to you. I was thinking about fishing, and then I had a buddy that had a stocked pond behind his house. And I remember one day we were bored, and he technically wasn't supposed to be fishing it because it was a family pond, but they were like, wouldn't let anyone fish it.
Yeah.
He would occasionally sneak in there and fish.
Yeah.
I mean, it was his family's pond.
Yeah.
And, but he had a bunch of these lures, like as seen on TV. And it wasn't the flying lure. It was like, or maybe it was called the flying lure. But anyway, I can't remember. So we like someone gave him to him or something. And we tried and we went out and caught a bunch of fish, but you could probably catch a fish there on anything. Yeah. But it got me thinking of all the fad stuff in the outdoors that's occurred over the past years since I've been alive. And how things kind of ebb and flow as far as what comes in and what comes out. And so it was the lures that got me spawned, but I started going through stuff and I mentioned it to you, but you said you couldn't think of any.
No, there's fads in every sport, and a lot of it, Paul, is probably commercialization. They're telling us, that you need to do this, you need to have a tree stand, and now you need to have a saddle stand, and So when I was thinking of lures, do you remember the advertisement for the Banjo Minnow? Oh my goodness, yeah.
So I looked up because I remember those commercials playing when I was a kid. Yeah. And there was a bunch of them. Yeah. And I'd never used those, but I got, thinking, so like during the 90s, it was, and I think it was like Buckmasters and Real Tree Outdoors. Yeah. Those, there was like a real obsession with inches of antler.
Yeah.
And just shooting big rack bucks. Yeah. And that was like all the talk back then. And I feel like nowadays that's kind of transitioned from, it's still, I mean, there's always going to be the guys that want to shoot. Like it's very important on how many inches the rack is and stuff like that. But there tends to be, it's kind of shifted nowadays into more of the experience. Yeah. And enjoying the process. Yeah. You hear a lot more of that nowadays versus, Well,
the thing about that is a lot of those, I mean, they're hunting private ground, and oftentimes their own ground. I can think of, and I won't mention all the names. There's a lot of them out there that the names we would all recognize. I mean, they're hunting their farms and stuff, and they cultivate deer just like they would a crop, and and to produce a Boone and Crockett buck and stuff, and that's something that certainly you and we don't have access to that, and that's pretty far from the what we do as far as deer hunting.
So that's a good point, because as I was thinking about this, it kind of matriculated into that. Yeah. Like I started thinking about management practices. Yeah, because it used to be these places were trying to manage deer, right, for bone. Yeah, for big racks. And do you remember like the term? And you don't hear it probably that much anymore, or maybe you do. I just don't. I'm not paying attention.
You're outside the loop now.
But like they'd be like, "That's a cull buck. We got to take that one out of the herd."
Absolutely, yeah.
And you would hear lots of talk about genetics. Yeah, and one of the problems that just always kind of, you'd hear people talk about genetics with a deer is, you know, a phenotypic trait, or so looking at speaking with genetics, you've got basically the genes code for something that's going to be physical in a
Right.
deer or a person or whatever. We call those the phenotype, the phenotypical traits. So antlers can be a sign of a deer's genes. But the other thing that I think gets lost in the whole thing, people forget about, is 50% of that deer's genome comes from a doe.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at the herd,
right?
You
can't judge the
you
antlers
really can't be looking at
from the doe
at a doe phenotypically and being like, well, we want that doe in the gene pool,
right?
So it's very hard. It's always been my opinion that it's like, I don't want to say impossible, but it's very hard to try to manipulate a gene pool.
Yeah.
In that sense.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of talk about, and it may still be, but you would hear a lot of people talk about genetics, and it was more or less a buzzword because, like I said, it'd be very hard to,
right.
There's such an interplay between genes and environment. Because they'll make the comment that you can starve the antlers off a deer.
Mm-hmm.
So you could have a deer that has the perfect genetic makeup for a beautiful rack, but if the nutrition
isn't there
and the environment isn't conducive to it, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, it plays a part in it, certainly. Yeah. What
and
they
then,
eat.
You get into the realm of, and I don't want to get too far down into genetics, but like gene expression. I mean, you can have genes that are there but not expressed.
Mm-hmm.
So that you're not going to see them,
right?
But
they can carry
the physical eye. But there can be genes that are not being expressed there.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I got thinking about management practices in Maine, and you'll get people that, these quality deer management.
Yeah.
And they've got like 100 or 200 acres.
Yeah.
Now, I just think of how in Maine it's such a daunting thing to try to do. Is to manage a deer herd for big deer.
Yeah.
It would be impossible. You couldn't do it with a couple 100 acres.
Well, and that's always, as of late, that wasn't even something that was discussed 40 or 50 years ago.
No.
When I grew up, I mean, if somebody, if you had a chance to, everything was legal. If you had a chance to shoot a doe, then you shot it and were happy and stuff, and it wasn't even thought of. And as we've gone on, some states have implemented that, and you can see in some states where it would work, like Pennsylvania, that where a lot of the deer that are shot, a high percentage of the deer that are shot are yearling bucks, and they're not given the chance to survive.
They're not making it.
And they want to, increase the likelihood of a trophy deer 2 or 3, 4 years down the road by putting antler restrictions on them. But the powers that be in Maine, the biologists and the scientists have always said that really wouldn't work in Maine because our deer kill by hunting is so small.
We need our deer to survive.
Right.
First of all.
They're not surviving, especially in the northern part of the state. They're just not surviving on their, without hunting. They were dying from winter kill or predation or whatever. So it wouldn't make any difference.
No.
You weren't.
And I think a lot of that, all those management practices that have kind of popped up and had gotten popular and still are popular, like the whole food plot thing is quite popular right now. That's kind of that's the thing. Seems like everybody that hunts outside of big woods,
right?
So agricultural, townish kind of areas.
Yeah,
they all do food plots.
Yeah,
and I really think that stems from those years of like, Buckmasters, Real Trail Outdoors, all those videos. That was basically, they were basically growing deer.
Yeah,
that was like their farming practices were centered around that.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me, who I've been around long enough that the dynamics have completely flip-flopped 180 degrees because nobody hunted around Fort Fairfield,
around the towns.
No. 60 years ago.
Yeah.
They went to the big woods. That's where the deer were. And now it's completely, it's like I say, it's flip-flopped 180 degrees. Now, Fort Fairfield in 2024, last fall, 57 deer were tagged in this township.
Yeah, everybody around me hunts.
That's a huge number.
Everyone has properties around me that they bought just to hunt.
Exactly.
They don't live on them. They're just 100 acres, 200 acres of just...
Put up a box blind.
They buy it.
Elevated box blind.
Food plots.
Plant a crop.
Yep.
And that like I say, that was so foreign when I was young. That was that very few people shot deer around town.
Because I was talking to a guy about that. He's from Allagash, and he brought up Escort.
Yeah,
and I was like, man, that's where all the old timers went.
Yep.
Back in the day.
Yep.
The 50s and 60s, and they went up to Escort. And I was like, and like Lacey's grandfather.
Yeah, well,
was my grandfather.
Yeah. Your grandfather went up, my father.
And it was so funny on like these guys weren't deer hunters first. They went up to party.
Oh, absolutely.
And drink.
It was the social aspect.
And just to prove to their wife that they were deer hunting, on the last day, they'd go shoot a deer.
Yeah.
Or one guy in camp would go shoot a pile of deer to hand out to everyone.
Right.
It wasn't a serious deer hunting trip. And you could shoot a deer in one day.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there was, like I say, it's completely, and there again, we talked about it the last podcast that, in the 50s and 60s, we were taking around 40,000 deer a year, harvesting 40,000 deer a year.
It was mostly up here.
And then most of them from central Maine north, and now it's from central Maine south that the line share.
You look at those towns back in the day, like Portage, like Dean's Motor Lodge there, those places were... Deer season, they were booming.
Yeah, it seems to me that I worked up there for quite a few years, and the tagging station there was Coffin Store, and it seems to me I've heard people say that it was the 400 range that they would tag in a season up there, Paul.
Yeah.
Of course, that was a tagging station that serviced hundreds of thousands of acres of woods. That was an entry point. It was an entry point to the North Maine woods, so it wasn't just town deer. It was people coming from 40, 50 miles out in the woods coming out to register their deer at coffins.
Yeah, those were good times.
Yeah.
For a deer hunter back then.
Yeah.
Lots of woods. Cutting practices were different.
Yeah. Few coyotes, like I say, 60 years ago.
Little to no coyotes.
There were few, if any, coyotes at that time. And things change. You have to be able to adapt.
Yeah. That's
part of being anything in life, a hunter, fisherman, and you have to adapt to
the conditions.
Yeah.
You do it on a micro scale during the deer season.
Yeah, absolutely. You do it constantly.
Day one is different than day 20.
Yeah, you better be able to adapt and stuff. And you could be just sitting around, twiddling your thumbs where there's no deer or anything.
Just hiking through the woods.
Yeah, taking your gun for a walk.
Taking your gun for a walk.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. You have to be able to adapt and change.
Oh, here's another lure that popped into my mind. You remember the helicopter lure?
I don't. The Banjo Minnow,
Banjo was popular.
Yeah,
that was always on.
The helicopter lure, I don't remember.
There was Banjo. Remember the Banjo Minnow? There'd be banjo music playing in the background. And it did look
fishy.
Lively, the way it moved in the water. It looked fishy.
Yeah.
And I think when I watched the commercial, he'd even said, it'll trigger their genetic instincts or something like that. Geez, we just throw a bunch of words together to...
Yeah, well, like I say, fads are oftentimes created by marketing, people trying to sell you, the latest and greatest, something new. And
we talk about clothes. Like right now, I think there's a resurgence in wool.
Yeah.
For hunting.
Yeah.
I think that interest is coming back. Because I still wear the buffalo plaid wool.
Right.
Which is like archaic to some people.
Yeah.
Because they're all wearing Kuiu and Sitka.
Yeah.
Which looks nothing like. But back in the 50s and 60s, that was buffalo plaid. That was
Yeah, I can remember, Paul. That was a big deal to me as a kid to get a wool coat like
Oh yeah, it still
like
is to me.
Like your dad and his buddies had.
Yeah, it still
I
is.
just couldn't wait to have a wool coat, like you say, buffalo plaid.
I will never. That's like buffalo plaid speaks deer hunting to me.
Yeah.
That's just.
Yeah, and it wasn't just Maine, the Northeast. It was out in Michigan and in that area too. That it was, yeah. So,
yeah, the smell of wool.
Yeah,
the feel of it. It just screams deer hunting to me.
Yeah,
I could never imagine wearing anything else.
Yeah.
One thing though on that topic of clothes is you talk about a fad has been the quote unquote. What would you term it? The city logger or the you get people and it's become trendy to wear like buffalo plaid shirts.
Oh yeah.
And like logging clothes.
Yeah.
That like Filson was one. And you've seen Filson's catalogs change in that direction. As kind of this like modern hipster clothing line.
Well, they've all done it, and we talked
Carhartt was another one.
Exactly. Carhartt, the working man's clothes and stuff. And everybody,
it's become trendy to wear those.
Everybody wanted a Carhartt logo on their hat and their vest.
Stanley was another. Lacey and I were talking about that. Stanley Cops.
Yeah.
Stanley was like guy grabs his
it was a working man's
lunchbox
thermos
and his Stanley to go to his factory job or whatever he was doing.
Right.
Now I got piles of Stanley thermoses in the house that are pink and yellow and
we talked
purple.
About LL Bean was big in that with her hunting shoe. And it became the LL Bean boot and everybody wore them across the globe. Yeah. I mean,
But so now as I was thinking about that, I'm like, well, and I don't think about the used market enough, but I've had a number of people email me like clothes and stuff they're getting on the used market of like Filson, Pendleton, even Carhartt, stuff like that. Hardly worn.
Right.
Wool jackets, wool shirts, wool pants, and getting them much cheaper than what they cost from the company because they're secondhand, but they've hardly been worn. Nobody would want a piece of wool for me that's secondhand.
No, same here.
Basically,
be tattered and
I've used it hard.
Yeah.
But so probably there's going to be a great secondhand market for all this stuff when it finally simmers down. But Carhartt stuff, people will pay big bucks for like used, worn Carhartt clothes. It looks like it's been.
It's funny you mentioned that. I'm wearing Carhartt pants right now.
Oh, I heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're a wannabe.
Yeah, no, they're great pants for me to work in and stuff. And
Red Wing boots are another one that people they'll buy on eBay and stuff like that. Like worked in, beat up Red Wing boots.
Yeah, and I get a pair of those.
There's a desire
in pretty tough
for
shape.
those.
They need to be replaced probably this year. I've had them for 2 or 3 years, and they're getting worn. And it's funny too because the intended purpose of some of this stuff, like we were saying, the LL Bean boots. Now, the last person in the world that would wear an LL Bean boot is an actual hunter who they were created for. Nobody wears them anymore. Nobody.
It was kind of state of the art then. A rubber boot down around the bottom.
Yeah, all intended to try to keep your feet dry because back in the 20s or whatever,
leather boots don't do it.
There wasn't a pair of boots out there that would keep your feet dry. So. No.
I'll be honest. I don't think there is a pair of boots that can keep my feet dry, no matter what. Because they either sweat.
Yeah, rubber boots are gonna make your feet sweat.
Yeah, or I'm gonna. And even they say it's breathable.
Yeah,
my feet still. But rubber like lacrosse boots are your best bet for.
Yeah. To be the most comfortable at the end of the day.
They are a super comfortable boot.
So you put in a good pair of, I use actually 2 pair, maybe a liner and a good pair of wool socks to absorb that moisture. So it's not your feet.
Well, as long as you're wearing wool, it never feels
wet.
That's
what I'm saying. You're usually comfortable at the end of the day.
Just don't have a pair of, what is it? There's the Burley and the Grange.
Well, the Grange, they make insulated and uninsulated. Okay. I get a pair of both.
Just don't get the insides of the uninsulated full of water.
Yeah.
You'll never get them off.
Nope. You have to cut them off.
Oh my God.
Either that or have your son pull them off for you.
I thought I was going to pull your hip out of socket.
Yeah.
That was just like a suction cup.
Yeah. They were full.
Someone else had told me a story similar to that. Like, man, they're a great boot, but boys, don't get any water in them and try to get them off at the end of the day.
They're hard to get off dry.
They're tight around the ankle.
They're tight around the ankle.
Which is good
the
for
uninsulated grange. And if you get them wet, oh my goodness. Yeah. Like I say, if you hadn't been there, the only option would have been, the only option would have been to cut them off. Literally, I'd have had to take my hunting knife and just run it down the side and cut it down.
Well, they had a hole in them anyway, so
they never were worn again. That was the end of those boots. So, yeah,
that was a good day. We should have had a deer that day.
We should have, but yeah,
should have, could have, would have.
Yeah.
What else? Yeah, any other fads you can think of that?
Well,
things come and go like crazy,
yeah, they do.
You know,
yeah. One of the fads that I can think of within the last, and I don't know how many years, spay rod. Fly fishing. Spay rod fishing became a thing. I just read an article about that. A guy that was talking about spay rod fishing. Something we've never done. I've never cast.
No, and it's a very beautiful thing to watch.
It is.
Guys that can spay cast.
Yeah,
because we used to watch. Remember the Trout Bum? Series.
Yeah.
Those guys were good fishermen. And they were legit.
Yeah.
Trout bums. They just lived and breathed fishing. And they did a spay casting when they were they're up on the West Coast there.
Yeah.
British Columbia or
Steelhead.
Steelhead fishing.
Yeah,
and
steelhead.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful watching.
Yeah. And I don't want to say it originated there, but that was one of the areas that it really took off on. If it didn't originate there, spay rod fishing, it was big out in the Northwest for steelhead.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, every sport has it, Paul. We got to sell products.
Yep.
So
I would probably say right now, I think deer tracking is becoming a fad.
Yeah, there's a lot of content out there.
And there's a lot of people doing it. A lot of people interested in it.
Yeah, there's a lot of content out there.
I think the past year, 2 years, the number of people that have come up to me just mentioning that they wish they would have been exposed to that growing up or earlier.
Yeah.
Like, it really, there's something intriguing. You kind of get two ends of the spectrum. You get some people that don't want anything to do with it. Then you get people that are just really intrigued by the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing about that too is it's difficult to find a place where you can actually do it. I mean, you've got to have lots of open land. Where you got to be able to roam for.
And I've been spoiled.
For miles.
Yeah, I've been spoiled so bad in that sense that even what I think a lot of people would call big woods, I don't really.
Yeah.
Like. I don't really. Because I'm used to like millions of acres of just wherever.
So where we're hunting now,
I don't really like
that's
that.
not conducive to tracking deer.
No, it's terrible.
It's terrible. Yeah. We talked
too many
about
roads.
that. At one time it was.
Yeah.
But now it is so fragmented. The forest is so fragmented through forestry and roads and stuff that it's not conducive to tracking deer all day long.
I never can fully. I never can fully relax.
No.
Because I'm always thinking, and the deer are amazing on how they avoid roads.
Yeah.
They will, but man, you push them hard enough.
Yeah.
They're going to go across. And I'm always like, okay, we're coming near a road.
Yeah.
I got to hurry up. And
yeah,
I don't know. It's not my favorite.
Yeah. But even the type of forest too, Paul, there's so much regen and stuff. And so plantations, the deer get into a lot of the stuff you're going through is right in your face, and it's not an open forest.
Well,
it's
the buck 3 years ago that I got a shot at him in a plantation.
He was in a regen, yeah.
And you would think and I was thinking the whole time, like, I just got to get through this because there's no way in heck I'm going to be on top of him.
Yeah.
And I was on top of him.
Yeah.
He waited basically on the other side of a tree.
So you're always going to have those areas where you just hope that you catch them somewhere during the day, when you do catch them, that, you get some sort of advantage. Maybe, you know, they're in an opening or
someplace you can see a
on
little
the edge
bit.
of a cut or in a cut or something, you know, that there's a lot of, you're going through a lot of areas as you track a deer that you're thinking, there's no way.
Good luck.
Unless I bump up my nose right into his tail, you know, I'm not going to see this deer in here.
And I laugh because as I'm sitting here thinking of places that I think I would be able to see good, like, oh, I got this good spot to catch up to him. Probably a lot of people would be like, I ain't a very long ways to be able to see.
No, that's right. But we'll take what we can
relative
get.
to a lot of places.
Yep. Yeah. So that has changed a lot too, you know, the deer tracking up here.
The other thing that comes to mind is, and I don't see it as much as I used to, but, and again, this goes back to those older hunting videos. They're selling a product, but scent elimination sprays.
Yeah. That's
like those were,
industry.
That was like in every one of those hunting videos. It was, they would spray themselves down and do their whole
ozonics or ozone.
What a market that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it evolved into the ozone stuff. I mean, it started with just spray bottle stuff.
And the funny thing about that is I've gotten older. That's one of the things I've eliminated. I paid no attention to that whatsoever. Yeah. The best I can do is if I'm still hunting, or if I'm going through a cut, if I'm going to still hunt someplace, I'm going to try to hunt into the wind. You know, I'm going to try. But if you're tracking a deer, you're just going where the deer goes. You're going to deal with what you take your chances and stuff. Yeah. And yeah, that's one of the things that I think the very least about now.
Yeah.
Is
if you just watch a dog, which a deer can smell much better than a dog.
Yeah.
Like there was a day that my dog was sitting in the living room and all of a sudden her nose goes up in the air and she's going around the house and she lets out this interesting bark when she smells something that it's very deep, kind of like just a little
different bark. Yeah.
And I'm like, what is up with her? And she's walking over near the sliding glass door. There was a bear going across the yard. Just totally like, there was something that she caught wind of.
So the science that I've read says a dog has about 200 and the low 200 million olfactory receptors in their nose, and white-tailed deer have around 300 million. We have, I think, 500 million, or 5 million, excuse me.
We suck.
So, we can't even comprehend how well they can smell. Yeah. You know, you're not going to fool a deer.
No.
The only way is if you're, you know.
Don't let them smell you.
Yeah, you're downwind. You know, you play the wind. Other than that, I give no thought to scent elimination.
No.
How could you? I mean, you're breathing and
I know.
You know, everything on you has an odor. Yeah. Whether it's a gun or
you can spray yourself down till you're blue in the face.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. You oil your gun.
There's so many scents that you're giving off. You know, I always joke that, you know, if you were out there and passed gas, they could tell you what you ate and when you ate it and,
you know,
and how much you ate of it. So
I wonder what it would be like to be able to smell like that. Cause you'd probably be able to differentiate basically. Like I think of like a soup. Yeah. And you could probably smell a soup.
Yeah.
And differentiate everything that was
they can sort it out.
That soup. There's carrots, there's onions, there's
they can
smell those individual components that make up the soup. If you had that much of a smell acuity, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think bear are even better than white-tailed deer. I think bear are probably the king of the woods when it comes to
they can find stuff.
Yeah. I've heard 10 miles away, an animal, a dead animal or whatever from 10 miles away. They are probably the kings of the forest when it comes to being able to smell.
Oh, speaking of that, and I'll mention that this here. So Brandon Lane, guy from he owns Allagash Guide Service.
Yeah,
he'd sent me a picture of he was out shed hunting, which there's a fad.
Yeah,
that shed hunting has gotten huge. I think he was out shed hunting or going for a walk or whatever, and he said his dog started acting weird. Like he's like, "What's going on?" And there was a coyote curled up in a ball, like it had laid down to go to sleep. Stone cold dead.
No kidding. Yeah.
Completely dead. But curled, if you looked at it, looked like it had just curled up to go to sleep.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder what.
Yeah. What happened?
Old age?
Yeah.
Did it have something wrong with it?
Starvation?
Get into something?
Starvation?
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah, because there's no deer, so nothing to eat.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was sarcasm. I'm not going to let that one go.
So we were riding down to Sunday. We were riding down to Portland, and we had a big coyote run right across in front of the
Oh, no way.
yeah, the car down in Littleton or whatever. The girls thought it was a big dog.
Yeah.
Narda and Nancy, cousin Nancy, thought it was a big dog, and I said, no, that's a big coyote.
Coyote. It's funny you say that because Lacey and I had just gone to Boston a couple weekends ago. We did the same thing on the interstate. Coyote had gone across in front of us.
This was down in, like I say, Littleton before we got to the interstate there. It went right across in front of
we saw one around Millinocket.
Yeah.
Between Island Falls and Millinocket.
Yeah.
Right on that stretch. Usually a lot of deer through there too.
Exactly, yeah. And another thing I was really surprised.
I haven't seen any there.
We come back last night, and of course it's all open now, and there's no snow down there.
No. Yep.
Even in the woods. And I expected to see a few deer along the road, and I never saw a deer.
No,
I was surprised.
Yeah. But I told Britt back to that coyote that he found just kind of curled up dead. I was like, too bad more of them just wouldn't go curl up and expire like that.
Yeah.
Fit them out a little bit. But in all reality, I haven't seen a lot of them this year.
Yeah.
Usually I hear them like crazy around the house, and I just haven't.
Yeah.
Haven't at all. But yeah, we're back to shed hunting. That's something that's
that became
getting really popular.
A really big fad, Paul, and very competitive and stuff. A lot of people doing it. Moose shed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then that must be not what it used to be, because when I deer hunted 20 years ago, I would find moose sheds all the time.
All the time.
And I seldom find moose sheds now. And we know the population has dropped a lot.
Yeah.
So I would assume that would be the reason, because where I would find them is, it's not where people are looking for moose sheds. They're more into the convenient, the roads and stuff. And I would be in the woods.
Well, and talking to some of these guides, guiding for them has become a big thing.
Yeah.
They start right in April.
Yeah.
Guiding moose shed or shed hunters.
Yeah.
And they'd said that a lot of them, it's not so much that they want to find a shed. It's more or less it's like a hike in the woods without going on a hiking trail.
Right.
It's a way to get out and enjoy nature, and like finding the shed is just the icing
secondary
on the cake.
Yeah.
Like that's a good point.
Yeah.
Kind of get away from the stereotypical hike and go out through the woods, see if you can find a shed.
Yeah. Like I say, I don't find nearly as many because we spend a lot of time deer hunting, and I used to find a lot of sheds, and I don't see nearly as many as I used to.
Remember down to Nana and Gramps?
Yeah.
Down behind their house, you find them all the time.
Yeah.
Everywhere down there.
Yeah. Now there's very few moose there.
There used to be a lot of moose.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was interesting just to think of how things change over the trends that come and go. You end up seeing things kind of come full circle. What was like right now, I think what's becoming big is kind of the heritage like things of the sports. So kind of the traditional aspects of it, like the old wool clothes.
Yeah.
Kind of coming around.
Yeah.
Not so much the huge antlered bucks, but more of the
experience,
the process and the experience behind the whole thing, which is good because that's kind of what it's all about. It's not, it's great to shoot a big deer or a huge trophy, catch a big trophy fish or whatever. But sometimes it's those like going back to a stream you fished when you were a kid or something and catching some 6 or 7 inch brook trout out of it.
It's funny you mentioned that, Paul, because I've done that within the last few years. Just going down to a little brook you can literally step over and dunking worms just to do it, because I was raised doing that, and there was always a lot. And there again, some of those places you get into, nobody does it anymore. Nobody goes down in there. You got it to yourself. Yeah. If you want to bushwhack into a little stream and stuff, you got it to yourself, and it's
not catch anything.
It's
huge,
quiet, and there's lots of these places have lots of little trout. You're not going to get anything bigger than 9 or 10 inches, and that would be a big fish in some of the places I fish. But I did it that way growing up, and I still like to do it. And
well, the kids are getting at the age now that's going to be more of a common theme. Yeah. But Lydia's, she's getting into fly fishing. She enjoys the fly fishing side of things. So, which I find is always good for a kid because it keeps them busy, right?
Gives they're them doing something.
To do. If you're not catching fish, they're casting their fly. Yeah. And because that's kind of the big thing with kids, just keeping them engaged.
They don't want to just sit there
the whole time.
Yeah, doing nothing.
No, if you're sitting there just watching a bobber or something, that can push kids away from. Yeah, they struggle with patience with that stuff at a young age. But so we'll be doing that stuff pretty soon. Won't be long.
No, couple weeks. Like I say, we're the 8th today, so it's hard to predict. We were looking really good, but then we ran into the last couple of weeks have been cold.
We had a cold stretch,
Yeah, not overly cold.
Yeah, like I tapped those maple trees, and I was getting, things were flowing real good,
and then it slowed
we
up.
Had a snow cold snap there. Yeah, it's like in the teens. Yeah, and things were just a couple days stayed in the 20s.
Yeah, and then tomorrow is a cold day. Tomorrow, highs only in the mid 30s, and then
warming up though.
Then from that point on, it all looks pretty good. Yeah, it's starting to. We're going to get up into the upper 40s and 50s, and
good.
And the nights are going to be in the low 30s or mid 30s. So things will start to.
I'm done with the snow.
Yeah, winter's long up here. We all get tired of it. Glad to see spring and robins and green grass coming up.
That's, you forget about how quiet winter is.
Yeah.
Because there was a morning I get up the other morning, and it cheers you up. I sat down, it was just starting to get light out. Yeah. There were robins outside.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, I haven't heard that much life outside of the house in the morning. And
we are right in the migration right now because there's robins everywhere.
Yeah. I love the sound in the morning.
Which chirping. That's one of the true signs of spring is a robin. When you start seeing a lot of robins, you know that spring is here.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Like, especially getting the sunlight too. We were sitting on the deck.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it just does something to your psyche.
Yep.
You sit out in the sun for
your mother and I went for a walk today. It was so beautiful this morning. They were, we knew the snow was coming, and we kept saying, oh boy, for a day that's supposed to have a snowstorm, it's really nice this morning.
I kept telling Lacey, I'm like, are you sure that we're going to get
so I worked out at the house first, and then we went for a walk. So, I got a few pounds I picked up over the winter. I got to shed.
They'll come off.
Yeah, hopefully.
Sitting in a boat all day, they'll come off.
Yeah.
Eating whoopie pies.
Yeah, no whoopie pies. No.
Well, good. All right, I guess.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
Yeah, like I say, there's always we move from fad to fad, Paul. There'll be something next year or next week. Well, we won't have to wait until next year. No. That
be the next latest and greatest gun
caliber. We'll try to vie for our attention and our dollars.
Yeah. Or someone will be telling you that
you need it.
You need it.
Yeah.
If you can hold it together and not bite.
Yeah.
Tends to be better.
Yeah. Well, like I say, the older you get, the more you understand that you probably don't need.
I don't change stuff up very often.
No, I don't either.
I'm kind of a contrarian anyway when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah.
It takes a a lot of convincing for me to be like, yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Usually I just automatically am like, yeah, no, someone's just trying to.
Although I bit into it last fall there. We talked about that, Paul. I bought a 7600 there. That certainly is a fad rifle for deer hunters in the Northeast right now.
Yeah. But it's a well-balanced gun.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a very well-balanced gun.
Yeah. But I can remember there again, 30 or 40 years ago, I knew people that had them that they rattled. They said they didn't want to hunt with them.
Yeah.
And now if they could get them back, they would.
I know.
They would certainly get them back.
Yeah, you could get them so cheap then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hindsight's 2020. You look back and you're like, man, if I would have stocked up on some of those, I could be sitting on a little gold mine.
Yeah.
But you never know where things are gonna
go.
You
don't know how things play out.
Yeah. So all right. Well, hopefully we'll be out fishing soon.
Yeah, like I say, that's of all the things I love to do, and one of them, of course, is deer hunting. I really look forward to deer hunting and bird hunting, the beginning of bird season. Boy, ice out trolling on the lakes is one of the things. I was raised doing that from 5 or 6 years old, and my dad loved to do it, and it's I can't wait. Everything, all I can think about is going up and even preparing, getting a fire. Yeah, getting the camp ready and getting the boat all ready and washing it, and maybe doing a tune-up on the outboard. And
someone had asked me, like, what do you like better, fishing or hunting? I'm like, whatever's in season.
Yeah, yes. Yeah.
I'm like, yes and yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
You really don't have to.
Yeah. After a long winter of being inside most of the time, to get out on and have the sun hit your face. And like I say, you have some really beautiful days out there where it might get into the 70s and stuff.
Be some brutal days though.
Yeah.
Windy, cold.
Oh yeah. I fished in the snow many times and wind howling and
water freezing on your guides.
Yeah. Yeah. You can get, that's funny
the days
about
you're catching fish.
That's funny about, late April and May. You can fish in 80 degrees and you can fish in the snow.
Yeah. There was a day a couple years ago, 80 degrees, no wind.
Yeah.
And you would think that'd be terrible fishing.
Yeah. We had
phenomenal fishing. Yeah. It was like everything just lined up to, actually, it was actually kind of dangerous because it was so hot, but you're on the cold water. You didn't feel it.
Right. You can get burnt back.
Come about 2 or 3 o'clock and the water was like glass. That just reflects that sunshine. I think we both at like 2 or 3 were just like,
we had a lot of sun
from,
And I think of that, and that's exactly right, Paul. You're out there and the water is maybe 40 degrees or whatever. So the air coming off in that water is cold. You feel cool, but that sun is intense and stuff, and you can really
get burnt bad.
Yeah, you can get burnt
and not even know it.
Yeah.
So
I might try to buy a bimini for the boat.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I told
keep
Narda,
the rain off you too.
I told your mom I was going to buy one. She keeps telling me to go ahead and order it. I gotta order it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something to throw up real quick if the sun or even if it rains, maybe keep a little rain off on us.
Make it so even wearing a rain suit when you're out there and it's pouring, I mean, it's running down your back. It's kind of puddling in your seat. And you can stay relatively dry, but it's not the same as having a little bit of
cover over the top of you, right?
Yeah. Keep your gear dry too.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a good chance I'll have a bimini ball on the boat there.
Help keep all the camera gear dry.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it's a little hard you get poles along the side, so it restricts your fishing a little bit, That's one of the downsides of it. You do have obstacles on the gunnels to deal with, which you normally.
But now there's more camera mount options.
There you go. Yeah,
there's always a positive.
Well, that's something you're concerned with. So,
all right. Anything planned for the rest of the day?
No, I don't actually, Paul. I made a few calls. Well, we're not going to talk about that on here, but no,
my maple syrup evaporator finally showed up.
It did.
Came yesterday.
Yep.
So we're doing that this week at some point.
Yeah.
It's coming from Ontario, obviously. maple syrup, something to do with. I ordered it through Home Depot, but it came from a place in Ontario.
Yeah.
And it got delayed.
Yeah.
I don't know if coming across the border or what the deal was. They couldn't figure out what tariff to apply to it.
Who
or something.
knows how that's all? We talk about not knowing what the future brings. So certainly we don't know how that's all going to play out and stuff. And
well, it ain't gonna bother me too much.
No, I don't worry about it. Not a bit. Not a bit. Things go up and things go down.
That's right.
And then things go up again.
That's right.
So that's the least of my concerns that people get all bent out of shape about stuff. I say, hey, that stuff has been going on since.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah. Nothing stays level.
No, it's good to shake things up every now.
It is. Yeah, shake the world up.
Hit reset.
Yeah.
A little unpredictability is good.
Yeah.
All right, I guess we'll do it again next weekend.
Yes. Yeah. Look forward to it.
Yeah, it's always fun.
Yeah.
All righty. I guess until next time, get outside.
It's good for the soul.
See ya.